What if Heinz Guderian planned Operation Barbarossa? Hey everyone, hit that subscribe button and drop your comments below. Today, we're diving into a thrilling what-if scenario that'll make you rethink history. What if General Heinz Guderian, the mastermind behind Blitzkrieg, had been the one calling the shots for Operation Barbarossa? Picture this. It's the summer of 1941, and Europe's a battlefield. Nazi Germany is gearing up for its boldest move yet, invading the Soviet Union in a campaign called Operation Barbarossa. Now, imagine if the guy in charge of this plan wasn't the usual crew of German generals like Franz Halder or Friedrich Paulus, but Heinz Guderian, the dude who practically invented Blitzkrieg, the lightning-fast war strategy that steamrolled France in just 6 weeks. Could Guderian's brilliance have changed the course of World War II? Let's dive into this alternate history and figure out what might have happened, with a nod to our American audience who love a good underdog story and a deep dive into strategy. Guderian wasn't just any general. He was a rock star in the military world, a guy whose book Achtung, Panzer, laid out the blueprint for modern tank warfare. His ideas were all about speed, coordination, and hitting hard where the enemy least expected it. For Americans, think of him as the military equivalent of a Silicon Valley innovator, someone who rewrote the rules of the game. But could he have taken on the Soviet Union, a country as vast as the American Midwest and as tough as a New England winter? Let's break it down, explore the economic stakes, and see if Guderian could have pulled off a miracle. First, let's set the stage. Operation Barbarossa, launched on June 22nd, 1941, was Germany's all-in bet to crush the Soviet Union in a matter of months. The plan? Smash the Red Army, seize key cities like Leningrad, Moscow, and Kyiv, and take control of the Western Soviet Union. It was drawn up by top German generals, Franz Halder, Friedrich Paulus, and Walter Marx, who thought they could repeat their Blitzkrieg success from Poland and France. But the Soviet Union wasn't Poland or France. It was a beast of a nation with over 170 million people, a massive industrial base, and winters that'd make a Minnesotan shiver. Here's where it gets real. German intelligence, led by Admiral Wilhelm Canaris, totally dropped the ball. They thought the Soviets had about 150 divisions. In reality, over 300. Plus, the Soviets could churn out tanks like the T-34. Think of it as the Sherman tank's tougher, meaner cousin, in huge numbers. By the end of 1941, Soviet factories pumped out over 5,000 T-34s, which gave German tankers nightmares. Now, let's talk economics, because wars aren't just won on the battlefield. They're won in the factories and oil fields. Germany was already stretched thin. By 1941, they were importing about 60% of their oil from Romania and other allies. Without capturing Soviet oil fields in the Caucasus, they were running on fumes. The Soviets, on the other hand, had access to massive resources. Their factories in the Ural Mountains and Siberia kept churning out tanks, planes, and guns, even as German bombs fell. By 1942, the Soviet Union was outproducing Germany in military gear, much like how the US outproduced Japan during the Pacific War. For Americans, think of it like this. Germany was trying to take on a country with a landmass of the entire US plus Alaska, with a population bigger than the US and Canada combined, and an industrial base that could rival Detroit at its peak. It was like trying to invade Texas with a gas tank half empty. Could Guderian have made this work? Let's imagine what his plan might have looked like. Guderian's game plan. A blitzkrieg to Moscow? Guderian was all about speed and shock. His blitzkrieg strategy was like a perfectly executed NFL play. Fast, precise, and overwhelming. In Poland and France, his tank divisions moved so quickly that enemy armies couldn't keep up. If Guderian had planned Barbarossa, he'd likely have doubled down on this approach, focusing on one massive, game-changing strike instead of spreading German forces thin. In the real Barbarossa, Germany split its army into 3 groups. Army Group North for Leningrad, Army Group Center for Moscow, and army groups south for Kiev. Guderian, being the maverick he was, might have said, "Forget that noise. Let's put everything into one knockout punch." And that punch, it'd probably be aimed at Moscow. Why Moscow? It wasn't just the Soviet capital, it was the nerve center of their rail network. Think of it as the Grand Central Station of the USSR. Capturing it could have messed up Soviet supply lines, making it harder for them to move troops and gear. For Americans, imagine if an enemy took out Chicago, cutting off rail lines across the Midwest. It wouldn't end the war, but it'd be a massive headache. Guderian knew Moscow wasn't the be-all and end-all. Stalin could have retreated to a backup capital like Kuibyshev, modern-day Samara. But taking it would have been a symbolic and strategic gut punch. Guderian's alternate Barbarossa plan. Here's how Guderian might have drawn it up. All in on Moscow. Guderian would have poured 80% of Germany's tanks and motorized divisions into Army Group Center, aiming straight for Moscow. The other 20% would have held the flanks, keeping Soviet counterattacks at bay. Think of it like focusing your entire football team on one play to score the winning touchdown. Speed is king. Guderian lived for speed. His plan would have pushed German tanks to move faster than Usain Bolt running the 100-meter dash. In the real war, German advances slowed down for resupply and consolidation. Guderian might have said, "Screw that, keep rolling." He'd bank on capturing Soviet fuel and food depots to keep his tanks moving, much like how General Patton pushed his Third Army across France in 1944. Locking down logistics. One of Barbarossa's biggest flops was logistics. German supply lines stretched thousands of miles, and Soviet partisans, think guerrilla fighters like the American Minutemen, kept hitting them. Guderian, knowing this, might have assigned extra motorized units to guard railroads and supply depots, ensuring his tanks didn't run out of gas or ammo. Risky flanks? In the real war, Hitler ordered Guderian's tanks to swing south to Kiev, encircling a huge Soviet force. It was a tactical win, but delayed the push on Moscow. Guderian probably would have ignored Kiev, keeping his eyes on the prize, Moscow, even if it meant leaving his flanks exposed. Risky? Sure, but that's how Guderian rolled. Don't dig in, charge. Winter prep. Guderian knew Russian winters were brutal. Think Minnesota in January, but worse. Unlike the real Barbarossa, where German troops froze without proper gear, Guderian might have pushed for winter uniforms and cold weather tank maintenance. He might have even paused the offensive in November to dig in, like a smart football coach saving energy for the fourth quarter. Even Guderian's genius had limits. The Soviet Union was just too big, too tough, and too stubborn. The Red Army lost about 3 million soldiers, killed, wounded, or captured by December 1941, but they kept fighting. Stalin could call up millions more, thanks to the Soviet Union's massive population. It's like if the US had to mobilize every able-bodied person from New York to California. Plus, there was Hitler. In the real war, he didn't meddle much until 1943, but when he did, like ordering the Kiev detour, it caused headaches. Guderian, known for his stubborn streak, might have butted heads with Hitler, maybe even getting fired, like he did in December 1941 for arguing orders. For Americans, think of it as a star quarterback clashing with a meddling team owner. The economic angle. Could Germany afford it? Let's talk dollars and cents, or in this case, Reichsmarks and resources. Germany's economy in 1941 was like a car running on fumes. According to historian Adam Tooze, Germany produced about 120 million tons of steel that year, compared to the Soviet Union's 18 million. But the Soviets were scrappy. They moved their factories to the Ural Mountains and Siberia, out of German reach, much like how the US shifted production to the West Coast during World War II. Oil was an even bigger issue. Germany burned through about 7 million tons of oil in 1941, but only 1.5 million came from their own sources. The rest? Imported from Romania, or made from coal. The Soviets, meanwhile, had the Caucasus oil fields pumping out 30 million tons a year. Capturing those fields was a Barbarossa goal, but even if Guderian focused on the south, getting there in 1941 was a pipe dream. Too far, too much resistance. Manpower was another hurdle. Germany mobilized about 7 million soldiers by 1941, close to their limit. The Soviets? They could call up 20 million over the war. It's like pitting a high school football team against the entire NFL. Even Guderian's best plan couldn't overcome that kind of numbers gap. Let's play out this what if like a Hollywood script. It's June 1941. Guderian's tanks, massed in Army Group Center, tear through Soviet lines like a hot knife through butter. By August, they're at Smolensk, and instead of pausing, they keep charging. By September, they're knocking on Moscow's door. The Red Army, battered and bleeding, scrambles to defend the capital. Stalin bolts to Kuibyshev, and German propaganda blares about the fall of Moscow, trying to break Soviet morale. But then winter hits. Even with Guderian's prep, German tanks struggle in 30 below zero cold. The T-34s, built for Russian winters, keep rolling. Soviet General Georgy Zhukov launches a counterattack, like a Rocky Balboa comeback. By spring 1942, the Germans, low on fuel and men, start falling back. The Red Army, fueled by new recruits and factories, pushes forward. In this alternate timeline, Guderian might have gotten closer to victory than the real Barbarossa. But the Soviet Union's size, resources, and sheer grit would have likely stopped him cold. Germany just didn't have the gas, steel, or bodies for a long war. Barbarossa's story is a goldmine of lessons. First, even the best plans can't beat reality. Guderian was a genius, but the Soviet Union was too big a beast. Second, intelligence is everything. German intel screwed up, underestimating the Soviets, like if the US thought Japan only had a dozen ships before Pearl Harbor. Third, wars are won in the factories as much as on the battlefield. Germany ran out of steam, while the Soviets kept their engines roaring. For Americans, this hits home. Think about modern conflicts. Resources like oil, chips, and rare earth metals are the new battlegrounds. The US learned this in World War II, outproducing everyone to win. Barbarossa reminds us, preparation, resources, and adaptability are what make or break a fight. So, could Guderian have turned Barbarossa into a win? Maybe he'd have made it slicker, faster, bolder. But beating the Soviet Union? That was like trying to knock out Mike Tyson in his prime. The USSR's size, manpower, and industrial might were just too much. Guderian's genius might have delayed the inevitable. But history's rules are tough to rewrite. This tale isn't just about tanks and battles. It's about ambition crashing into reality. Guderian's ideas still inspire military thinkers, from West Point to modern battlefields. The takeaway? Think big, plan smart, but never underestimate your opponent. Hey, don't forget to subscribe and leave your comments. What do you think? Could Guderian have changed history, or was the Soviet Union unbeatable? Drop your thoughts below, and let's keep this epic conversation going.